Hey guys, Sko here. Welcome to X-Men Explained, episode 4. Today we're going to talk about Cyclops. He is my personal favorite of the 4 X-Men that we have right now. He's really powerful and really interesting to play. I think his play lines just kind of branch a lot in really interesting ways. We're going to talk over his kit briefly. Thankfully, he does not have quite as much rules weirdness going on as the first 2 heroes that I talked about. Which is nice to see. So I'm going to also use part of this video to talk about the X-Men supports in general and also some of the allies, since he sees a lot of them. Speaking of, his alter ego ability says you may include X-Men allies from any aspect in your deck. We're going to pretend that that is true during deck building, and you can include X-Men allies from any aspect, which is a super powerful ability because those allies are sweet, and they're probably going to just get better as we get more of them. Your alter ego ability, Constant Training, is an action to search your deck for a tactic upgrade and add it to your hand, limit once per round. So important to note that this is not a setup ability, so it doesn't happen just once per game. So every time you flip, you're going to be able to use this ability. You're going to be able to use it on both sides of flipping. So on the turn that you're hero and you flip down, you can use this ability to grab a tactic upgrade, either one you want to play, or perhaps more likely, because you're going to be in alter ego mode, you just want to draw something as a resource. So kind of plan that. There are other tactic upgrades you could include in your deck, kind of just to have redundant pulls for this. You're going to have an aspect. He comes with one tactic upgrade in every aspect, but there are other cards from previously in the card pool, like Plan B, Rapid Response, some shield cards. Maybe those are events, but it's important that this is searching your deck for tactic upgrade, okay? He has another very similar effect that works differently. But as long as you have a tactic upgrade in your deck, you can grab something. So that is super powerful, and the flexibility of his flipping down and how much power he has by doing that is a huge part of like his power level and flexibility. On the hero mode, he has an awesome 2 thwart, and he has Optic Blast, an action that's an attack to spend a resource of any type to deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. So it doesn't need to be one of Cyclops' upgrades, but you'll have aspect options to turn that on as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about some key cards from his kit. First of all, something I see people miss is Field Commander. For one thing, it's a permanent. It lets you take the first turn during the player phase. It does not actually make you the first player. So effects that target the first player or like allies that get passed around by the first player, those still get passed around in the same order. Just Cyclops will always take the first turn, and then the first player, if he's not the first player, will then go. You don't take 2 turns in a row. Also, Cyclops' upgrade attached to minions loses the temporary keyword. This does not let you keep your upgrades on the villain permanently, as awesome as that would be. The temporary keyword is new in this kit, and it's new in this product, and it means that his upgrades get discarded at the end of the round. So of course, key to his playstyle are the upgrades themselves. So I thought I would talk about them. They all are upgrades that attach to an enemy, and they say max 1 per enemy. Strictly speaking, that's new wording, but max applies to cards by title. So it isn't saying that there's a maximum of 1 tactic per enemy. It's just that there can only be 1 practice defense on each enemy. So you can have multiple practice defenses in play if they're on multiple enemies. Also, you can have multiple tactics on 1 enemy as long as they're different tactics. And they have that new temporary keyword, and then they each have an ability. Practice Defense has a constant ability that says the attached enemy gets -1 attack. So being a constant ability means that's always going to be in effect. So even if the enemy has 0 attack for whatever reason, like if during their attack process their attack is increased, for example, by boost icons, this will still have an effect and then reduce it by 1 attack. So it can be really sweet there. Also, especially in like Project Wide Awake or somewhere else where you really don't want to chump, keep in mind that slapping this on the villain and your 2 defense is kind of like having 3 defense. You're a little more tanky than you might think you are, even without using allies. Priority Target is just an awesome card that lets you draw 2 cards as a consolation prize for beating something. The interrupt happens when attached enemy is defeated. The player who defeated it draws 2 cards. So that happens before the enemy actually leaves play. It's going to happen before any when defeated or responses to the enemies dying. It happens before the enemy actually leaves. And it does go to the player who defeated it, so it's not always Cyclops. If your friends kill the enemy, they're going to draw the card. But it does say player, so it doesn't need to be Cyclops specifically. It can be support, like attack team, or it could be non-attack damage, or your allies, whatever. If you're the player that defeated it, you get to draw 2 cards off a priority target. So this is one of my favorite ones to play and recur. I like to get it done at least twice through every deck cycle, or perhaps more times. Oh, also, enemy or villains do get defeated between stages. So you can put this on the villain and you will draw 2 cards even if you're just defeating one stage and going to the other one. All right, and then exploit weakness over here costs 1, and it says increase the amount of damage attached enemy takes from each attack by 1. So this one being 1 cost means I don't really play it early game very often. It's kind of a common thing for me to grab as a resource, but it's really great for ending the game. So the amount of damage they take from each attack will be increased by 1. So that will not affect non-attack damage or things like retaliate, but anything that is an attack, they're going to take an additional damage, which is pretty awesome. If multiple different enemies are in play and they each have exploit weakness, they'll each take additional damage from that attack. But exploit weakness being on one enemy won't affect it on another enemy. A card that's kind of relevant to this conversation is Ricochet Beam, your attack. So it's a hero action attack. It says deal 3 damage to an enemy, period. Deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. So you'll notice that it doesn't say different enemy, so you can target the same enemy with this twice. It's just that whoever you target with the second sentence needs to have an upgrade attached. So an attack that targets up to 2 enemies can trigger a bunch of weird things. If the first sentence defeats a guard minion, you can use the second sentence to target the villain. How these 2 cards interact is currently an open question, and there's some differences of opinion about how this works. So I'll update in the comments when we get an answer on this. But some of us think that this works like fairly generously by basically increasing every instance of damage on an attack that this person suffers. Therefore, Ricochet Beam on an enemy with exploit weakness would do 8 total damage. Some people think that it applies to an entire attack, but knows that it has already applied once to each attack, that it only applies 1 time. So I will get an answer and post that on here for now. In the meantime, you just have to decide for yourself, I suppose. And then finally, perhaps my favorite card in Cyclops' kit is Tactical Brilliance. He has 3 copies of this, and it's a 2-cost hero action thwart. Remove 3 threat from a scheme, choose a tactic card in your discard pile, and add it to your hand. Now, it's important to keep track of what this ability does versus our alter ego action. Tactical Brilliance hits a tactic card, so it doesn't have to be an upgrade. So that means it can hit tactic events. Game time is a really huge one that you might want to recur with this. Also, Tactical Brilliance hits your discard pile only, and Constant Training hits your deck only. So when playing Cyclops, you want to keep track of kind of which, where your Cyclops tactics are, where your other tactics are relative to your deck and your discard pile, and keep in mind which cards you're gonna grab from which. So this one is roughly like a 2 expected resource, 3 threat removal, but it's a lot better than that because the ability to tutor a relevant card out of your discard pile is great. This can get you multiple plays of priority target throughout a round, and it is just totally awesome. Love Tactical Brilliance.